I'd like to thank our panelists. Barrister St. Michael Gwaogie is a civil society activist. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be here again.
We also have with us from Foundation for Good Governance and Social Change, Comrade Shedrack. Comrade Shedrack, thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you very much. It's nice being with you today.
Okay, let's set the tone for this discussion, particularly on the issue of grazing. I think, in a sense, what has really pushed this conversation to the front burner is the stance taken by the South governors in banning open grazing. You want to build on that, Barrister St. Michael's?
Yes, I think that the South governors have the authority, to make that pronouncement, which is now popularly referred to as the Asaba Declaration. It is an expression of the relevant provisions of the Land Use Act of 1976 that confer the right and power on governors, to hold land within their domain, in trust and for the benefit of the people that reside, within their domain. And they have taken into consideration the feelings and the yearnings and aspirations of their people, and they are so, taking a stand. Whereas we have an Attorney General of the Federation who has come out openly, to kick against that declaration, making allusions to the relevant provisions that guarantees the right, to freedom of movement. I like to say the right to freedom of movement is only guaranteed for human beings. And that is the intent and the intention of the drafters of the Constitution. I'm not sure that the drafters of the Constitution and our forefathers intended that provision, to be applicable, to cattle. Okay. Having said that, I want to say, without any fear of equivocation, without any shadow of ambivalence, that the actions and inactions of those who are supposed to, whose responsibility and duty it is, to protect the interests of everyone in this country, at the moment, is very, very worrisome. You see a minister of an administration that is constituted, to protect the rights of everyone in the country, making assertions, expressions, that tend to constitute a threat to certain persons within a section. Even the president openly coming out and describing a group of people as a dot, within a circle. We continually threaten, the fragile unity that we enjoy in this country at the moment. Nigeria have never been this divisive and polarized.
Okay, we'll just pursue there, Barrister St. Michael. Let me get your perspectives on
taking it from where he stopped.
Yeah.
I think it was sometime in May, at about 22nd of May, where the Federal High Court in Abuja made a pronouncement supporting the anti-grazing law by this government, insisting that they have the requisite capacity, backed by law, to implement anti-grazing laws in their territory. Before this pronouncement was made, I have often felt that simple logic, common sense, constitutionalism, and also some form of judicial precedence would have dictated to us all that the position of the Attorney General of the Federation is relatively weak and baseless. Because what we have in Nigeria today is a democratic system of governance and not a form of military junta. And at the foundations of democracy is respect. Respect for the rule of law, respect for constitutionalism, respect for fundamental human rights, respect for due process, transparency and accountability, and above all is a respect for the doctrine of separation of power. And in the doctrine of separation of power, the Nigerian government needs to understand that the state government is not an appendage, of the federal government. And as such, they were democratically elected, just as the states and federal government were democratically elected.
Okay.
And they should not in any way try to twist or bully the state governors to make laws which are contrary to the interests of these persons they are sworn to govern. And then this consistent attempt to insist on open grazing despite the ban by governors shows that the federal government is intending to undermine the capacity of these governors in enacting policies for the good and well-being of their citizens. And it also goes a long way to set some, to put in motion some form of conflicts, government-instigated conflicts, which I believe will have some far-reaching consequences on the Nigerian nation as we have it today. And also clearly stating that the ban on this open grazing is legitimate, is democratic. It represents and reflects the yearnings and aspirations of these Nigerians. And the Nigerian federal government should know, just as cattle is important and dear to the Fulani, so also is land and the collective well-being of the people dear to the Southerner, which they consider as the first and most important factor of production for all of their economic activities. So I strongly want to advise the federal government to please shove this idea of banning open grazing, because even some established leaders and governors in the north have come out openly to say that this open grazing is a very dangerous arrangement. The Kano State government has spoken, Taraba State, Bauchi State, and even Benue State. So it should not be made to look as if it's a northern and southern. They are trying to, the federal government is trying to polarize the north against the south on a pedestrian issue of cattle rearing and open grazing. And I strongly believe that they cannot shove this idea down the throats of Nigerians, because even if it were to be a military junta, he would have faced some form of strict resistance, let alone when it's a democratic governance.
Thank you very much. If you just join us, it's still TMI Monday, and we're x-raying some of the issues that have come forth in recent time on the challenges confronting Nigeria, particularly as it relates to ban on open grazing. Well, for the southern governors, they're insisting that the ban on open grazing is here to stay. And in spite of the reactions that have trailed this development. Okay, let's get you in here. If you're saying the governors have the right to make the decision that they have made, is this backed by law, Barrister said Michael Egwalge?
I just said that the Land Use Act confer on the power on the respective governors, to hold and to keep and to protect land within their domain. This land is to be kept in trust and for the benefit of the people they govern. So, in repeating what I said before, I said that declaration is an expression of the right and power, conferred on the governors, by the law presently constituted in Nigeria. Mr. Sonny Duke, I like to say, without any fear of equivocation, that the inflexible insistence on a system of animal husbandry that have become anachronistic and antediluvian is a deliberate attempt, to adulterate, the feeble democracy that is in practice today and convert it into what I call chaotocracy. It is only in a chaotocratic Nigeria that the life of a cattle is much more important than a human being. It is only in a chaotocratic Nigeria that an Attorney General of the Federation will be thinking of enforcing rights to freedom of movement as it is applicable to cattle rather than human being. It is only in a chaotocratic Nigeria that the federal government and the presidency will be insisting on establishing, an open grazing route for animals, whereas human beings do not have durable and passable roads to move on. It is quite, it is quite appalling. It is disgusting. I don't know. It beats my it beats me hollow. To find that the government at the moment is concentrating on pedestrian issues, very irrelevant issues, Whereas we have, fundamental problems.
How do you say it's irrelevant when, in fact, this is a major issue that is triggering crisis across the country?
The biggest problem facing Nigeria today,
yes,
is the problem of insecurity.
Yes, and grazing has become part of the insecurity challenge.
Kidnapping,
yes,
in Nigeria today has reached a seismic and alarming proportion, to the extent that the rates at which it is increasing is in a geometric proportion. As we speak, the problem of banditry has forced Nigeria to the edge of its precarious precipice, threatening to cascade into an ocean of emasculation. As we speak today, the activities of Fulani herdsmen is threatening the corporate existence of the nation. Yesterday, I deliberately went to Ring Road, to the People's Parliament, where people gather to read newspaper. Now, when I saw the collection of all the newspapers on the stand, what did I see? I heard discordant voices. All the newspapers reporting threats and counter threats emanating from diverse ethnic, political, and religious groups. What does it tell you? It tells you that the union is under threat.
Okay.
The corporate existence of Nigeria is under threat. The only thing that can keep it is sanity and reason.
Let's pause there for a moment. Barrister Alakwe Mbanefo is joining us now in a moment on the show. I will be back with you. Please don't go away.
TMI, every opinion counts.
Thanks again for rejoining us on the program this morning on ITV. Beautiful Monday morning as we continue with our conversations on grazing routes and the Constitution. We're joined now by erudite lawyer, Barrister Alakwe Mbanefo. Thank you for joining us, Barrister Alakwe. Okay, let's get your perspectives on, is this just a mere distraction that there are plans to reopen grazing reserves, or this is what is needed now to deal with this frequent crisis between herders and farmers, as they call them? We know that there is a 1965 law that backs the existence of the National Grazing Reserves, about 415 altogether. We just have 2 in the south and the rest in the north. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, in my last interview with the ITV, anchored by Livestock, I did draw an inference to this particular issue, citing some of the books that was authored by learned Professor Chinua Achebe. And I tried to draw the analogy by citing most books he authored, trying to link it to what is happening today in Nigeria. And the first book I cited was Things Fall Apart. And in that book, he did submit that when things fall apart, the center can no longer hold. I also cited the second book titled No Longer It Is. Chinua Achebe in that book also narrated that when things fall apart, it therefore means that it is no longer at ease. And again, the last book he authored before his demise, he titled that book, There Was a Country. And the question therefore was, if there was a country, what actually happened to that country? Where do we go from here? And if that country is now having these issues, I also looked at the bookshelf again, and I saw another book titled The Arrow of God. Also authored by the same Professor Chinua Achebe. In that Arrow of God, we're now asking, where now is that arrow of God being pointed at? Have we offended God that is making the arrow of God to now face us as a nation? And so, the whole hullabaloo about the grazing route is a mere distraction. If I might quote my very good friend, Benaduk, of great ITV, it's a mere distraction. Because it doesn't exist in any way. The law that you were talking about that was made in 1965 have been overtaken by events. I want to agree with my learned friend, my very, very good friend, where he was making reference to the Land Use Act. And the coming of the Land Use Act kept into abeyance that particular law.
Yes.
After that law, the Land Use Act has vested everything concerning lands on the governors.
Yes.
And further, to expatiate more on this, the Land Use Act was equally, adopted by the makers of the 1999 Constitution of 1999, inures in favor of the Land Use Act.
Yes.
And if the Land Use Act is the part of the contents of the 1999 Constitution, we expect that the General of the Federation to appreciate the fact that the Constitution is the ground norm and that the supremacy of the Constitution cannot be undermined.
Yes.
So what it implies is that it's either the AG of Federation and his legal team are not giving the right legal advice to the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, President Muhammad Buhari. With all due respect to him, he's not a lawyer. And so he is relying on the advice given by the Attorney General of the Federation, with all due respect to him, and his legal team. And in that case, if he's ill-advised, you expect him to come out on television to toe the line of the advice given to him. And nobody can blame him because he's not an expert in law. It's my duty and the duty of my very good friend, who is also a lawyer, to inform Nigerians that the whole story about the grazing route is a measure.
Okay.
Having said that, the certain governors in their meeting in Asaba, which is popularly known as the Asaba Declaration, has said we don't need open grazing in the south. And they gave their reasons for not wanting open grazing in the southern Nigeria. And those reasons include that the women, their wives, their women who goes to farm are being raped and killed by unknown headers. And that the Nigerians are being kidnapped on a daily basis along the roads. And that the crops are being destroyed by the rampaging cows. And that the issue of insecurity has taken a toll on southern Nigeria, which is therefore affecting the economy of the south. And as such, they don't want open grazing. The duty of a government, of a responsible government, is to protect lives and property. And if a particular part of the country is complaining that people are being killed on a daily basis by a group of persons or alleged group of persons, it's the duty of the government to find out what is happening and to ensure that lives and properties are being protected. And so we expected that in that interview, that Mr. President will have been compassionate
and sensible.
Yes, about the complaints given by the Senate governors and come up with a solution of how to resolve this issue. Instead of saying that I intend
to reopen Grazing Reserve. Yes. All right, I'll come to you in a moment. Yes, Udugbai, come to Shedra.
Taking it off from where my learned colleague just stopped.
Yes.
I wasn't so surprised by the position of the president in all of these issues.
Yes.
Because we've known the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria to be very provincial and relatively very parochial in his disposition towards the Nigerian Fulani. But seeing the Attorney General of the Federation, who perhaps is much younger, supposedly to be more enlightened, and perhaps a more cosmopolitan Attorney General of the Federation, taking the same position with that of the president, to say the least, is utterly reprehensible. I have often argued what exactly is the agenda of the Nigerian government in this whole issue of open grazing, because there is a clear distinction between the open grazing and the grazing reserve. The open grazing in itself is what was enacted, what was preempted by his last statement when he said there were grazing routes that needs to be reopened. That is open grazing. You see, this whole thing started with, they came out first with Ruga, and that was vehemently rejected by the Nigerian populace. Later, they moved on to cattle colony, and that couldn't still see the light of day. Just recently, they came out with what they call the National Livestock Transformation Plan. That one had grazing reserves in it. And we're all looking at it to see, hope there's no booby trap in all this arrangement. Because we know there's a sinister arrangement in all of this. So as we were watching out for that, he came on there and announced that there were grazing routes that we need to revisit. But we need to say that those grazing routes they said they were there, and those were all established before the enactment of the Land Use Act in 1978. And the Land Use Act announced put all of those things to end. Because there's now a legitimate precedence for the ownership, administration, and the management of land in Nigeria. So the question I'm beginning to ask, what exactly is the intention of the Nigerian federal government, knowing the precarious nature of this Nigerian democracy, still insisting on the Nigerians that we must have a way with this open grazing, to say the least, is undemocratic. I really want to appeal. I really want to appeal to the Nigerian federal government to please shove aside this issue of open grazing.
Yeah, I recall in your first line, you said something like there was a judgment by a high court in Abuja, saying that the federal government has
the state government
has
the right to implement anti-grazing laws in their respective territory.
Okay.
Because the Land Use Act,
so that's a legal backing in a sense for the state governor's action. Okay, let me get you in, Barrister Igwage. You've been itching to say something. Yeah.
The issue here is very, very elementary. By way of an adding to what my learned colleague has said here, the open grazing route and the law that the presidency is alluding to is a piece of antiquity that is inapplicable in our contemporary Nigeria. It has been overtaken by event. That's one. Secondly, the Asaba Declaration find expression in a law that that is recognized by the 1999 Constitution, which is the faucet origo of Nigeria. If there's any law for the time being enforced in Nigeria that is in conflict with the Constitution, that law is null and void. Ab initio. Thirdly, I believe that the inflexible insistence on a curative, when there's a sharp disagreement between the doctors in attendance, could prove fatal to the patient. Instead of insisting on a law that has become anachronistic and antediluvian and inapplicable, what the president ought to be embracing at the moment is dialogue and reason. I said earlier on that I smell a deliberate attempt to adulterate our democracy and convert it into chaotocracy. I thought you were going to ask me, what is the meaning of chaotocracy? Chaotocracy, in my mind, is government of the cow, by the cow, and for the cow. It is only in a chaotocratic environment.
But that doesn't exist in Nigeria. What we have in Nigeria is democracy, which is government.
That was why I said I smell.
But you're not smelling it in Nigeria. You're not smelling it in Nigeria.
There's a deliberate
what we have in Nigeria is democracy.
To reduce the environment to a chaotocratic environment where the life of a cattle, the life of a cow is much more important than the collective lives of every Nigerian.
Okay, let me just pause you for a moment, Mr. Barrister. This is live television, and we try as much as possible to control our emotions and choice of words. What is operational in Nigeria, as you and I know, irrespective of our emotions and sentiments, is democracy. Government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And the Nigerian government is headed by President Muhammadu Buhari.
Yes.
So we need to establish that fact, so we don't send the wrong message and attract the wrong.
Somebody's afraid of ABC.
No, not that. You know that in Nigeria, it is democracy that we have. It may not be a perfect democracy.
Yes.
Because we don't have a perfect system in any part.
There's no perfect system anyway.
Okay, so this
just
is the
like
point.
I am not perfect.
This is the point.
You are
this
not
is the point I
perfect.
want us to focus. So quickly, I call the point.
However, conclusively, just to summarize my point, what I'm saying is that if you want grazing roads and you want a people to donate their land for that purpose, you engage them, you dialogue, let reason prevail as against coercion and force.
Okay. All right.
At the moment, the element of dialogue is not on the table. What the presidency is employing is coercion and force, and that could threaten the corporate existence of our union.
All right, you wanted to add something quickly.
Yeah. I strongly believe that for the first time in a long while, when all of these clashes, this incessant clash between farmers and herders has been brought to the fore, to public domain and in established national discourse, for the first time, the Métis Allah has also supported the ban on open grazing in the south. Because they too have also suffered some form of collective damages in all of these clashes. Herders have died, and cows are also lost. They've already lost humongous resources due to these cows being killed. Then they understand that this thing is relatively not sustainable going forward. And there's also need for them to look into modern means of cattle rearing, whereby the economic sustainability of the herders and also the cows can be properly taken care of. So I begin to wonder, why is it that the Nigerian Fulani is insisting that cattle rearing is a traditional way of life of the Fulani people? Because if grazing is all about feeding the cow, I begin to wonder why it now connects trekking around or roaming around the whole state from place to place, trespassing on the fundamental rights of other persons who own land in these respective areas. So I begin to question. First of all, some persons have already stated clearly that many of these Fulanis who move around with cows only own a fraction of this cow. The cows are mainly owned by some Fulani elites who do it as a very elaborate business by buying.
And then you also have Southerners who own these cows as well.
And they say the arrangement is relatively unfair. So I see the embers of fire being built by these persons who have cows. If the Métis Allah can come out and say, okay, let us look for other modern means of protecting the interest of this business. Though it has been our cultural way of moving around, but let's see if we can have they now begin to raise the issue of infrastructure. That it will take them relatively huge amount of money to own a piece of land to begin to plant grasses. Because that, of course, when you have such arrangements in grant, there will not be provision for grass mills. There will be provision for a manager who will superintend over the farm. So all of those modalities will cost money on the part of persons who own this cow. So I see it as a very greedy attempt to stifle, to infringe on the rights of other persons while furthering your interest in making profits for personal aim. Because cattle rearing is a private business. So I still do not understand what is the problem or the concern of the Nigerian federal government.
Okay. It's an interesting conversation because we also have farmers who are very traditional in their approach to farming. And in spite of the mechanized way of farming, they still carry out their farming activities using the crude means of bush fallow, mixed cropping, and all of that. You remember?
In answering that question,
Yes.
If the northern Fulani elites believe that roaming around with cattle is a traditional way of life, I've asked, where they are not seeing the sons and daughters of this Fulani elite, the sons and daughters of this governor, trekking from Kaduna to Lokoja in carrying out the traditional principle of cattle rearing? Their children are not found among these Fulani elders.
In other words, the children of the Fulani elites are not
practicing the tradition.
It's
a tradition, they ought to practice it in totality.
When was the last time you saw the child of a Fulani governor trekking from Kaduna to...
I don't want us to overplay the ethnic...
the sentiments around
Yes, the ethnic sentiments on the conversation, okay? But let me get Barrister Alakwe to ventilate his views on where do we go from here. The federal government is insisting on reopening grazing reserves, grazing routes, and saying that they've been in existence. The Constitution apparently is against grazing reserves or grazing routes, having entrusted ownership of the lands and land resources to state governors in trust for the people. So where do we go from here? There seems to be a conflict now.
Well, there's no conflict because the law is there. There's no conflict because the law is there. If the federal government is insisting on grazing route or whatever, they should approach the National Assembly to amend the Constitution. that particular section that accommodated land use act, if you're unable to, amend the constitution, the Constitution has amended, which actually, accommodated land use act, giving the governors the powers to, oversee, to be overlords over the lands in their states, then you cannot do anything about it. Because one lawyer will go to court and everything will be knocked off. And so, as bad as it might be, there is still law in this country. There are courts in this country where judgments are given and is obeyed by both government and individuals. So, again, the Constitution notwithstanding, it also behoves on certain governors to ensure that they approach the ages of the states and the House assemblies of each of the states. Also, if it's possible, to also make a domestic law, banning, open grazing. Because in as much as the 1999 Constitution has amended, and the Electoral Act, the Land Use Act, has given that power to the governors. I am not sure that the issue of open grazing was captured in the Land Use Act.
So if it wasn't captured in the Land Use Act, isn't that a lacuna that could be exploited and explored by?
It's a lacuna that could be explored by the federal government. That is the more reason the governors of the southern Nigeria should approach their state house assemblies and the AGs to fine-tune a law, banning open grazing, so that the AG and the federal government do not take advantage of that lacuna to do anything they want to do.
Okay.
So because this country is governed by democracy, and you must fall back on the laws of the land, and of course apply the rule of law. And so we cannot gloat over it. We must look at the law as it were, and because what makes a great lawyer is for a lawyer to look at the law and look at those lacunas there and take advantage of it and argue his case in court.
Good or bad.
And knock it off. And so it behoves from the governors of the Southern to ensure that a new law is made pinpointing on open grazing.
Okay.
Banning open grazing.
Doesn't that lend some? Doesn't that? Some are saying, well, this lends some credence to the ongoing constitutional amendment. Barrister Gwage. That's our tailor point because I just have a few minutes now. Yeah.
Mr. Solid,
Yes, I've opened another chapter entirely that will be
very interesting one.
Yes.
It's very, 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 very interesting. What we need in this country today, in the face of so much acrimony, in the face of so much conflict, quarrel, threats, and counter threats, it's not a constitutional amendment. Amendment will not solve the humongous and plethora.
But he just talked about a lacuna in the Constitution that could be explored and exploited to the disadvantage.
I agree with him. I agree with him.
Yes.
I'm in perfect imolako with the submission as it relates to the governors approaching their state assembly, making a law that expressly ban open grazing. Because at the moment, a declaration is not a law. You can't just converge in Asaba and make an open grazing and make a ban on open grazing and expect the police to work with that. The enforcers of the law, will not work with a declaration, a mere declaration. Are you getting it now? But however, I am still saying that the amendments of Constitution that is being proposed at the moment by the National Assembly is a mere cosmetic approach to the problem. What we need is a constitutional review. What we need to do, it is either we visit the document emanating from the was it Constitutional Conference or
yes, Constitutional Conference.
The Constitutional Conference,
Confab,
the Confab under Jonathan.
Yes,
a document emanated from that Confab. Where is the document?
Let me
again. Is that Erofa headed a committee of
on true federalism
governors and APC members on true federalism. A white paper emanated
from that
yes. process.
Okay.
Where is that paper? Again, is that we have the 1963 Constitution. If you fall back on the 1963 Constitution, the 1960 Constitution provides solutions to almost all the problems we have in our contemporary society.
Is that a justification for calls that we should fall back to the 1963 Constitution?
All you need to do is to take that 1963 Constitution, amend it, adjust it, mutatis mutandis, just for it to be applicable to our contemporary society. And you know, it becomes a new constitution for us.
Okay, let's get your take on this. Yeah,
Johnny was
amending the constitution to reflect some of these things highlighted so far.
We've done constitutional amendment in this country for close to about 5 times now since we returned to democracy in the Fourth Republic in 1999. The boiler, I'm sure, said they couldn't use the 2014 confab white paper because it was done by the party in opposition. It was done by the PDP. And they said, okay, you do yours. He came out and he did his own on true federalism that was spearheaded by Erufai. Today, that thing didn't see the light of day. And yet they went back indoors and came out with a new arrangement of constitutional amendment. And some money, a huge amount of money, were budgeted for all of these arrangements. So the question is, where will now be the political will for the enforcement of all of these arrangements? I see it as a deliberate attempt to calm the names of those persons who are agitating for secession, to let them know that we are working on these things. Whether you like it or not, sooner or later, we're going to have a brand new constitution. Because some of the lawmakers have come out in public domain to argue that they can amend the constitution left, back, right, front, and center and come out with a brand new document. Even though some other senior advocate of Nigeria has stated that there are some clauses within the constitution that cannot be amended. All we should look for is a referendum that will lead to a people's constitution. Okay. They've berated all of those ideas and have still insisted on engaging in this constitutional amendment, which I know that the current Night Assembly has been considered still does not have the political will to enforce that constitution into law. The amendment, whatsoever amendment they arrange. Because there's been this outcry of devolution of power and because the 1963 Constitution, as he has pointed, has a very powerful clause that 50% of the resources from every region is given to the region. What we have in Nigeria is 13%. Given to
the states.
There are lots of troubles in that. If you look very closer, there are lots of troubles in it that there is a strong variance with the way and manner democracy is being constituted in this current Fourth Republic. And as such, taking that document down, we have to dismantle lots of things which intrinsically will not favor persons in power.
What the law it was citing, the provision it was citing in the 1960 Constitution says expressly that revenues will be generated and converged. Whatever is generated, 50% is allocated, to each of the states.
Where it is generated from?
Where that resources is generated from.
Okay.
Now, 50% of it will be put in a common purse and divided according to need. No, I think no, it's like 30%.
Okay.
30% will be shared to others, while 20% will be kept in a common purse and shared according to need. That is true fiscal federalism. And that is not the only beautiful part of the Constitution. If you go to the 1963 Constitution, there is pure attempt to, decentralize the center. There's pure devolution of power.
Okay, now
federalism, represents.
Okay, ancillary to all of this conversation is the issue of insecurity. Whether we like it or not, the challenge of open grazing is also fueling insecurity because it breeds a lot of friction between the herders and the farmers every now and then. And we know that some states have started doing something about it by setting up their own security structures to be able to deal with this issue. Now, we have a similar challenge in that the law backing it up is not yet in existence. I mean, in some of the states where you have a motorcade, for example, I'm not sure all the states in the Southwest have provided a law to back a motorcade.
Very true.
The same vein, the South states have made a declaration on ban on open grazing. there is no law backing it up. So isn't this just a hocus pocus? Let me borrow the words of Pastor St. Michael Egwaki. Pastor Alakwe, let's get your take on this.
Yeah, well, we agree with my little friend that it could be a hocus pocus, because the whole thing is that is no recently here in Edo State, one of our very learned senior barrister, Dele Igbenedion, got a judgment in the Court of Appeal against the Edo State government over the use of Okada or
ban on motorcycles. Yes, Okada
inside the town. The Court of Appeal held that the pronouncement of the then governor of Edo State, Adam Toshomole, that motorcycle usage in the Edo State is hereby banned, does not pronounce to a law. That's just a mere announcement of the then governor, Adam Toshomole, that motorcycles should not be used within the metropolis, does not translate to a law. And as such, there is no law in Edo State
banning Okada. But I haven't been seeing Okada within the metropolis.
So it appears the state government has appealed against that judgment.
Okay.
But then that is
the matter is in Supreme Court.
The point I am making is that it is not sufficient for a governors from the south to make a pronouncement and expect it to become a law until it is fine-tuned to be a law. It is signed into law by them after it has passed through the stages of readings at the House of Assembly. And so the pronouncement of the governors of the Eastern region, bringing a Bubago into form, does not make a Bubago, give a Bubago, the legal teeth to bite.
Yeah, and is in disarray right now because the chairman has since resigned his position, saying that
Bubago is for IPOB. Is the Eastern Security Network that is for is a government owned?
But we're saying the same thing. We're saying the same thing. And the chairman, resigned his appointment, saying that there was no funds. No funds were made available to run it, and no backup. So so this is the reason why I asked this question, because people have said. I'll bring you in now. People have said, look, even at the presidency level, that governors need to take charge of their state. Governors should stop crying to Mr. President for everything and anything. They should take charge of their state security-wise. They collect security votes. What are they doing with the security vote? So, more or less, you can call it broad passing, but in a sense, it's a call to governors to rise up to the occasion, move away from political sentiments, move away from ethnic sentiments, and actually take charge of their states, Barrister Alakwe.
Yes, governors can only take charge of the state if they have enabling laws, giving them powers to take charge of the state.
But some of these laws are laws that can actually emanate from them, from their state houses of assembly.
The president of the country cannot abdicate his duty as a president, as a commander-in-chief of the armed forces. And so when the president was saying that governors should take care of their state, the president was only trying to run away from his responsibilities as a president, as a commander-in-chief. And so the issue of securing lives and properties is the primary duty of the government, and the buck ends on the president's table. And so, taking it from where we're coming from just before now, if the government of the day agrees to restructure, as has been proposed by the El-Rufai committee, that there was need for true federalism and all that, then the issue of the constitution would be a very minor issue. But where they now fail to restructure, what it means is that the constitution, which is preamble, said, we the people of Nigeria hereby make this constitution for ourselves. You see that as at the time it was made, there was no time we the people of Nigeria sat down.
I'm sure Sonny was not even there. So it was
a military constitution.
Uduba was not consulted.
Yes. It was a military constitution done under Abubakar. It was a child of necessity due to the crisis of June 12 and all that time. And so there's nothing wrong if we the people of Nigeria decides to make a fresh constitution for ourselves, because as at that time the circumstances then
they are different now.
Are different now.
Absolutely.
There are a lot of problems. Again, back to your question about, where do we go from now? As far as the issue of insecurity is concerned, and looking at the challenges all over the place and all that, is that the issue of insecurity can be addressed properly because the 1999 Constitution created a lacuna, as you said earlier, on the issue of security in this country. The 1999 Constitution, as amended, fell the issue of security, the police, the issue of armed forces, fell under exclusive list of the federal government. The 1999 Constitution, as amended, gave exclusive power to federal government on the issue of armed forces. And so, if you establish a Bubagu or a Motekun, you don't have legal powers to arm them unless the government, the federal government, decide to do so. And so, the Constitution of 1999 gives exclusive powers to the federal government to arm any security outfit they feel like. So the state government do not even have the powers.
So that's the challenge. That's the challenge.
To arm this
security outfit that they are creating.
No matter how much you give to the state governor, he doesn't have the legal requisite to.
So he's limited as to what extent he can actually go in funding the security outfit.
You said so. You said so. That's exactly what they're saying.
Even beyond
the truth be told.
Yeah.
This government should stop, passing blame. Because, as I understand it now, this has become a government of blame.
It's not a government of blame. It's not a government of blame.
Mr. Sonny Duke.
The government of President Muhammadu Buhari.
Mr. Sonny Duke.
Yes, the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
The Constitution. The Constitution simply made the president the chief security officer of Nigeria.
The same way the state governors are chief security officers of their states.
The state governors, on paper, are chief security officers of their states. Whereas the commissioner of police, the CP in the respective states, do not take directive from the governor.
But during election, during election,
the Inspector General of Police.
During election, some of the states do. Some of the state governors do. Some of the CPs do. When it comes to election, the state governor know how to liaise with the commissioner of police, other security infrastructure.
If you don't want to be political,
yes.
You want to be very, very realistic.
Don't they? I'm asking you a question, don't they?
If you want to be realistic,
that's why I'm asking you a question.
You will know that all the commissioner of police they were not, none of the commissioner of police. Is there any commissioner of police in Nigeria today that's appointed by state governor?
No.
If they were appointed from the center, from where their directive come, is it not from the same source where the appointment emanated? It is common logic and common reason. Are you getting it? It's like giving somebody something with the right hand and taking it with the left hand. That is what the Constitution has done.
Quickly, final word.
Beyond the arrangement of policies to back the position of the governor as the chief security officer and wanting him to take the front stage in curbing the incidents of insecurity, there's no instrumentalities of state powers. Even the Bubagu, the Amotekun that you spoke about, what is the capacity of those persons who are people, those security
and they don't vigilante.
Okay.
And they don't vigilante.
What is the remuneration of those persons who are officers in these security outfits? What is the quality of weapons that they are being made to hold? What is the mobility? So all of these questions are being brought to bear. You see that this whole thing.
There's an accidental discharge everywhere.
All right, gentlemen, thank you for the views expressed on our conversation today on the debate on ban on open grazing or reopening grazing routes and what the Constitution says. The state governors must do the needful to take a step further beyond banning open grazing to establish or enact laws that will back up their action. As it is at the moment, events that really have overtaken these routes. Be rest assured that in some of these routes, maybe houses have been built, institutions have been erected there. So what happened to those institutions? I'm sure that there are more civilized, reasonable, and sensible ways to deal with this issue to ensure that everyone is carried along, everybody's happy at the end of the day. Going the way it used to be back in the 60s, in the 50s, is certainly not the way to go today because the society keeps developing, keeps advancing. I mean, in the 18th century, during the Industrial Revolution, three key things happened. we had major advancement in technology for production, for manufacturing. And then the society also advanced because technologies that came forth impacted the society. And then the society became richer. And then multiple channels of services also came up. All of those things helped to advance the society, and it is continuing in that direction. Today, we are not where we used to be as a people, as a country, even globally. It wouldn't make sense that we continue with the same old way of doing things and expect a different result. That's tantamount to madness. We're certainly not the mad people. We expect that the voice of reasoning will prevail and what is needed will be done so we can put this thing in proper perspective and move the country forward. I want to say big thanks to Barrister St. Michael's,
Thank you so
Barrister Alakwem Banefo, and Comrade Shedrack Dubai. Thank you for coming. It's the TMI Monday with yours sincerely. We'll take a short break. We'll be right back. Stay with us.